So today we're talking about Vaccinate, healthy leaders, healthy organizations. And when I said the Vaccinate, there were some queries why the name. So I'm going to start maybe with a little bit of definitions and then we will move on. So what I'm going to cover today is a little bit about health and mental health, specifically pertaining to organizations, burnout prevention, but then also take a new look at how we can look better at ourselves, and then also how can we look better at our employees and our organizations. In today's world, you all know the term VUCA, the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity and the ambiguity of today's world, but we deal with a lot of forces these days in organizations. There's so much more connectivity, we're 24 hours on, there's globalization, there's cultural things that we suddenly need to bear in mind that we're doing business with globally. There is changes in teams. Teams are not something that we meet with anymore. Teams can be anywhere. It can be virtual teams. So there's a lot of new complexity that we deal with and all the competition and the speed of everything that we deal with. If we just look at information, it's doubling every 18 months. How do we deal with this? How do you take care of yourself and how do you equip others? How do you coach others or mentor others also to deal with it? So what is the gap from what we said now in terms of the challenges that we deal with? There's a gap. The one thing is that we think what worked in the past will work in the future. Okay, so derailment risk. The other thing is, and that's the one thing that we mentioned already, that we all focus on action. What can we do? Instead of reflecting, we don't make time for introspection anymore as leaders, especially if you don't have time. How can you afford time to be quiet and to reflect on it? The other thing is then we become accepting and we just tolerate dysfunctional behavior and dysfunctional policies. And the last one is the flawed belief that our status and our actions alone determine the quality of our leadership and forgetting about the connections that we have with people. So let's go back to the title of the talk, Vaccinate. Now, what is Vaccinate? Vaccination means you give something that have an immune reaction so that when you're exposed to the stressor or the infection, you don't contract the illness. So you build up immunity. So we talk about individual immunity. That would be like, I'm vaccinated for measles, mumps, and rubella, for example. Therefore, if I'm exposed to the virus, I have immunity against it. I won't necessarily become ill. Should not become ill at all. But then there's the second concept of herd immunity or community immunity. If we immunize enough of us in this room, even if there's a few that's not immunized against it, they will not contract it because the chance of the thing, the gogga, being around us is too slim. And that's the concept why we should vaccinate leaders. If enough of us as leaders are healthy and resilient, we can also, in a way, protect people that we work with, other leaders or our teams or our organizations that might not have the same resilience. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. Mental health is well-being, where everyone reaches their own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively and fruitfully and contribute to the community. If we look at mental health problems in this concept where I'm addressing it, I'm looking at stress-related illnesses. So it's burnout, depression, anxiety. It affects 1 out of 4 of South Africans. Now I did a quick count, that means roughly 7 of you would be struggling, 6 or 7, okay, at some point in your life. What makes it even worse is 75% of South Africans do not seek treatment for it or do not have access to treatment. The lifetime prevalence is 30%. That means 1 out of 3 of each of you sometime in your life will be struggling with a mental health illness. And then I put it on the spectrum, anything from stress, burnout, anxiety, panic attacks, depression, the whole spectrum of it. Neuropsychiatric disorders, in terms of all the psychiatric things and then neurological problems like concussion and those, is the third biggest contributor to the local burden of disease. More than things like diabetes and hypertension together, more than things like HIV and TB together. What is the cost to South Africa? Now, this is a study that was done in 2013 retrospectively, but mental health illness in this South African study cost us 2.2% of our GDP per annum. It cost each person, in terms of cost to that person, loss of income, absenteeism, etc., 54,000 rand per year. The total annual cost to the country in 2005 was 40.6 billion rand. Okay. Now, this is the only South African study we have about this cost. But there was recently, in 2016, a study by the London School of Economics and Political Science, which looks at various countries, including South Africa, in terms of what is the cost of burnout, anxiety, and depression in the workplace. We look at $17 billion US. To put it in perspective, the dark blue is absenteeism, the light blue is presenteeism, so being at work but not being functioning at work. To put that in context, the presenteeism is more than the whole tourism industry in South Africa. So there is definitely a return on investment here. Okay, so when we look at stress specifically, we're looking at its prolonged tensions. So this was just in a moment stress, but if we talk more in general, it's when our bodies are subjected to a prolonged period of tension. And then there is neurobiological changes. There's cortisol, and the cortisol is secreted, and that cortisol makes that our heart beats faster, we're breathing faster, our mouth goes dry, our adrenal glands do not fatigue. I don't know where the You magazine concept comes from, okay? But it results in a lot of cognitive, in other words, how we think, how we can decide, how we can concentrate and make decisions, and in emotional symptoms, irritability, anxiety, tearfulness, but also physical symptoms. And physical symptoms is those aches and pains and all these bodily sensations we talked about, and then finally behavioral problems. So people can become more irritable, get short with their colleagues, they can start to self-medicate with alcohol. So all kinds of things are associated with that. So it's not always negative things that give us stress. Winning a lot of money can also be a stressor, as losing a lot of money, because now if you win money, you need to keep the family away. So what these major causes of stress? What is the things that cause you a lot of stress? What is the things that from a day-to-day basis cause you stress? Okay, there's kids, there's husbands, there's traffic, uncertainty, fear, technology. Technology is a huge stressor, we deny that. Time, no? Time, but uncertainty. What is other things? Safety. Feelings of hopelessness or powerlessness. You can't change the situation. You don't have a say in the situation. Loss of control. Absolutely. Surprises. Social support, for example. Work shifts, which influence sleeping patterns, for example. Occupational demands. Lack of participation in decision making. In other words, feeling powerless or voiceless. Group problems, working conditions, work under load and overload. So in that type of environments where there's a lot of burst activities, it's better to make the low pressure times more busy, doing additional tasks, additional courses, increased stimulation, because then the jump to the high burst activity is less, and that protects. It's that change that's dangerous for people in terms of burnout. Now, if you read through these questions, who of you notice some of this in yourself? Some of it look familiar. Now, this is symptoms of burnout. Now, what is burnout? If we look at burnout, burnout is not something that we actually diagnose in South Africa. There's no such diagnosis. I know you see a lot of sick certificates that say burnout, or people will often say, I've burned out. So what is burnout? It was first described by Friedenberger and Maslach around about 1974. And it is described as a triad of depersonalization, emotional exhaustion, and reduced personal accomplishment. So you work harder and harder, but the output is not the same. And that's something that you can be very vigilant with your teams or your co-workers at work. When you see they push longer and longer hours, they're busier and busier, but there's no results. That's the one thing. The second thing is then the emotional exhaustion, more emotional, irritable, anxious, teary, short. And then also the depersonalization. What that means is I don't feel connected to people anymore. I keep my distance. I don't find things funny anymore. I don't want to make small talk anymore. Talk about work or leave me alone. Okay. And also not feeling connected anymore. And that is a dangerous triad that we see. Now, there's a few causes of burnout, and if we can summarize it, and that comes back to what we just said about the very slow activity as work as well. If there's a lack of meaning, you're more prone to burnout. Now, with the original research, they showed they mostly did the research in healthcare professions and later on in educators and teachers, and we still know that it's the most high-risk professions to develop burnout. But because of the change in the world, even if you're in finances, you work these days with people. Even in a call center, where you're just with a telephone, you work with people. So technically, no one is protected against burnout anymore because we all deal with people. The second thing is persistent imbalances of job demand and job resources. And if we talk about demands and resources, it's in terms of time, it's in terms of finances, it's in terms of physical hands, but also it's in terms of intellectual capital. So knowledge. You need to do things and there's no one that you can ask for help. You do not have a mentor, you do not have a coach, so there's a lack of knowledge. And that also contributes to burnout. And then the last thing, which is a very important one that we forget, is conflicting values. And conflicting values can be a mismatch between your values as a person and your organization. If that is the case, leave the organization. The bigger problem comes in is if the proclaimed values, like what is put up on the wall or on the website or proclaimed, and in action is not the same. We say there integrity and fairness, but one person can get sick leave and be late for work and the other one is disciplined for it. So lack of control, unclear job expectations, dysfunctional workplace dynamics, poor job fit. We talked about the extremes of activity, lack of social support we mentioned, and then work-life imbalance. Okay. And that's where I'm going to move on to now a little bit in terms of what we can do to prevent this. But this is what they use overseas. If we look at burnout, hyperactivity means you're busy. Exhaustion, reduced activity then is that withdrawal stage, emotional reactions, breakdown, degradation, all the physical problems, and then eventually despair and even suicide. Now, when we reach breakdown, in medical terms, that's already depression. So that's why we don't distinguish, because by the time the people present to you with burnout, it is actually already depression. It's too late. But burnout, what is the cost? Burnout is expensive. We mentioned now what is the influence on our economy and the impact. But there's direct cost, and direct cost is, for example, the vacancy cost, loss of productivity, the recruitment and administration cost of getting new people, training them again, and start up of the new people that you need to train. But there's also indirect cost, that is, for example, absenteeism and presenteeism, but also instability of the workforce, reduced productivity, and then even increased stress and burnout amongst the remaining employees. Okay, because there's an additional load on them. And how do we assist them then? And then eventually a decreased commitment to work. So burnout can be expensive. Depression was predicted to be the leading cause of disability by 2030. It was already by 2010. So we exceeded the WHO's expectations. There's a high comorbidity between anxiety and depression as well, sleep problems and substances. Depression is a biological disorder, and that can be due to chronic stress, because that cortisol that's sustained over time can literally burn the serotonin producing hormones or neurons in your brain not to produce enough serotonin. And that causes irritability, anxiety, and depression. So it's a biological thing. 5 or more of the following present in any 2 weeks' time, of which 1 need to be a depressed mood and or a loss of interest or pleasure. You get people that is not down when they're depressed, they just have complete loss of interest or pleasure. Things that they used to enjoy, their hobbies, their sports, their friends, taking care of the house, doing your daughter's hair in the morning, that things that give you joy is just gone. There's just no interest. Stop exercising because I just don't feel like it anymore, just sleep. Okay, that is also a symptom of depression. And then changes in appetite, either more or less, sleeping more or less, irritability, negative thoughts, feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, or even that life is not worth living. That is symptoms of depression. And often when people come to you that they have burnout, this is actually what they have. If we look even further, so 1 out of 6 people somewhere in their life will be depressed. The more stress you're exposed to, the higher your risk for depression, but you can counter it, and that's where the life stuff, the health come in, what we will discuss. A lot of time out of work If we look at that, the rates in South Africa, 8,000 suicides per year. The current stats, as 2 weeks ago, 230 attempts per day, of which 23 successful in South Africa. If we look at anxiety, also 1 out of 6. And anxiety is either chronic stress, like, for example, chronic anxiety disorders like generalized anxiety disorder, where you worry about everything, together with physical symptoms, spastic colon or IBS type of symptoms, headaches, or it can be like just panic attacks. Lifetime prevalence, what the stats show is more in women than in men, but we don't believe that to be true because women is more prone to help-seeking behavior. They speak easier about it. They look for help for it. It's not a weakness. And then the second thing, men are more prone to self-medicating, for example, with alcohol. However, the situation is changing. I am at this stage extremely concerned over the past couple of months how many young professional women between the age of 30 and 45 I see that's alcohol dependent. Substance abuse, there's always an easy way. If you suspect one of your colleagues have a problem or a family member, that's what we call the CAGE questionnaire. Just 4 simple questions. It's not attacking. But it's true for whether it's alcohol, cannabis, painkillers. And the 4 questions you can ask: did you ever think you should cut down? Have you ever got annoyed if someone mentioned that you should cut down? Have you ever felt guilty about your use or use in secret? And then if you ever had the need to take an eye-opener in the morning, you start your day with a painkiller, or you start your day with a sip of alcohol or BioPlus. There's alcohol in BioPlus. There's people that drink bottles of BioPlus. Okay, be aware of that. So what can we do to reduce stress? Okay. This is one solution, but it's maybe not something that's sustainable. Now, we might have some chronic other problems with concussion and head injuries then. So what's the counterpart of it? Is resilience. Because life throws us stresses. We know now about these global forces for us as leaders, but also in an organization. But now the irony is we can carry a hell of a lot. Our weight-bearing capacity, or our weight, the load that we must carry can be balanced by our weight-bearing capacity. And we can work on our weight-bearing capacity, our resilience. If you build your resilience, you can deal with way more stresses. And what is the definition of resilience? There's various ones that I got from the literature. The one is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, etc. The process of negotiating significant sources of stress. I like this one, the leader's capacity to sustain effort and stay at course as a key factor in organizational success, especially during these VUCA times. The one that I really like is a simple definition of ordinary magic. Doesn't matter what comes out, they bounce back and they bounce forward. And that's the important concept of resilience. It's not only bouncing back, it's also growing in the process, getting stronger in the process, getting more self-belief that you can deal with adversity in the process. And that makes you change fit. It reduces the economic and personal health burden if you can deal better with things. It enables more effective responses to the stresses in the VUCA world. And it's associated with resistance. I can bear the weight, I can recover, and I can transform, I can grow in the process. Now there's various models, and you will see how I'm going to discuss 2 models with you, but how they interact. And the Roffey Institute looks in terms of resilience at keeping perspective, having emotional intelligence, purpose, values, and strengths, looking at connections and managing your physical energy. This is what the Roffey Park Institute proposed. What I'm going to discuss now, which I bolded on, I read a book about in 2014, it was published. I read it in 2015. It's a book by Bob Rosen, called Grounded. And he's a CEO of healthy companies, and he did research where he had interviews with, at that stage that he published the book, he had personal interviews with almost 400 CEOs, which they then have best in industry interviews plus 360 feedback sessions in terms of what helped these people to cope. And they looked at everything from IBM right through to Ford. And what was interesting, what comes out, there was a direct correlation between their health and their performance. If you look at their physical health, emotional health, intellectual health, social health, vocational and spiritual, those that were high on it outperformed those that had low health on it. And what drives then great leadership was 3 things: Who you are drives what you do. Your values, your purpose, the meaning that you have. Who you are is grounded in the 6 dimensions of taking care of yourself, physically, emotionally, intellectually, socially, vocationally, spiritually. And then healthy leaders build teams and organizations that outperform. So if we can be healthy leaders, there's direct positive consequences in terms of healthy organizations. What he then proposed is a healthy leadership model of exactly these things, and I'm going to run you through it. But what I've done, when I read the book, I think, oh, this is a very nice model, but it's devoid of neuroscience. And what I try to do now today for you is I try to bring up in some of the neuroscience that actually underlies these concepts. Why is this real? So if we look at physical health, and that's the first leg or first aspect that we talk about healthy leadership. The first aspect then is body-mind awareness, energy management, and a peak performance lifestyle. So it's easier almost to see when you're in trouble than when it is to know that you're healthy. So what is the danger signs when your physical health goes off? Your energy and stamina, stress and happiness, not thinking clearly, lifestyle habits, which is bad, illness, poor concentration and attention. No matter what you're doing, if you are doing it excellently, then you're in touch with who you are. This is the heart and soul you're here in the first place. Otherwise, what's the point? Bill Johnson from Heinz, the tomato sauce. There's no such things as work-life balance unless you create it. An ounce of prevention is a ton of benefits. But what is the bottom line? Unhealthy leaders produce unhealthy companies, and unhealthy companies produce unhealthy employees. And unhealthy workers are costly workers, whether they're on a corner office or in a factory line. So what is the things that we can do in terms of our physical health? The first thing is sleep. Now, none of us will die if you don't sleep. It's not, you don't have to, but you definitely perform better if you sleep. But it's important for your immune system. You all know that if you don't sleep properly or if you travel a lot, you're more prone to airport flu and colds and stuff, sniffles. Okay? So it affects your immunity. Secondly, it's affecting your hormonal balances. There's hormones called ghrelin and leptin which regulate our metabolism. So if you sleep deprived, you're more prone to obesity. As I mentioned, it's important for our mental health and our resilience, but then also very important for learning and memory. The other thing is then clearing toxins, and this is very interesting new research now in terms of neuropathology, that we thought only the rest of the body have a lymphatic system to get rid of toxins. We now know that the brain also has a lymphatic or so-called glymphatic system which remove toxins. Exercise. Who of you exercise regularly? If you have to choose between sleeping 30 minutes more or exercising 30 more minutes, you should choose the exercise. Exercise directly benefits the brain. Okay. You grow new neurons, especially in your memory areas, in your hippocampus. Never mind the physical benefits that it has on your body, your blood pressure, your glucose control, your weight, all of those. It improves also your immunity. It increases positive emotions. It decreases depression. If you exercise, and this is now not to be physically fit, this is for mental health, 30 minutes, 5 times a week at 65% of your maximum heart rate, which basically means a brisk walk, bit out of breath. You don't have to go to the gym, you don't have to go and run. Going to the gym is exhausting and it's noisy. Okay, why would you want to do that? Okay, go outside, walk for 30 minutes. Okay, but if you do 30 minutes 5 times a week, you reduce anxiety and depression, i.e. burnout, with 47%, and you increase memory and concentration with 20%. There's another aspect of exercise that's very good, is that social connections. Especially if you walk with someone, even if you just walk with your dog, but that connection that you have. And then the sense of the achievement that you get from, I actually commit to this. The third thing that's very important, education then, is about how our brains are geared for lifelong learning. The more that we think, the better our brains function, regardless of our age. New connections, improved storage and retrieval. Okay, neurobics, that's an interesting concept. We all know that aerobic exercise is good for us. But what is neurobics? Neurobics is giving your brain exercise by simple things. It's like brushing your teeth with your left hand instead of your right hand. Another aspect of physical health is then diet. Now, our brains is consisting 70% of fat and water. Just fat and water. And the other 30% is a chemical soup. And that chemical soup or neurotransmitters is directly related to the food we eat and the amino acids we take in. It's eating like you're living on a farm, where there's fresh fruits, there's fresh vegetables, there's grains that's unrefined, and there's meat. So that is the diet that's sustainable. Okay. But obesity, being overweight, increase your risk for inflammation in the brain, which then creates depression or dementia. There's also a bidirectional relationship between depression and diabetes. If you're depressed, your sugar control is not good, and the other way around. Bottom line is decrease refined stuff, decrease carbs, proteins, fat. You need them, but not in excess. But make sure that you get enough vitamins and minerals and fresh produce in. Specifically also, don't skip breakfast. And especially if you look at your fortified cereals, you need vitamin B for your Krebs cycle in your body, which is important for all the metabolism, whether it's your brain and your body or whatever. But you need vitamin B. You need vitamin E also, so you need to eat your greens, whether you like them or not. And if you only choose one veggie for your children, choose broccoli. Okay, it's the best one for them. Okay, and then flavonoids and then omegas. There's a permanent debate between omega-3 and 6. You need both. The problem is the omega-3s that you find in fishy oils is better, but there's also a lot of omega-6. So there's people that prefer then the plant-based omegas, but then they don't have, again, enough balance. So the debate is still on about which one is the best. What we recommend is there must always be omega-3 and a little bit of omega-6. You can't avoid it, but try to take both. Use your fishy oils, but also your flax seeds, etc., etc. Red wine is good for you in moderation, and that's where the problem comes in. Okay, so there's resveratrol in red wine or in the stuff, which is an antioxidant, which is good for you. So if we look at social health is about authenticity. It's about mutually rewarding relationships and connections. It is about nourishing teams and nourishing your communities. Now, once again, it's easier to see if there's a problem in terms of inability to build and participate in strong teams, peer relationships, difficulty to see someone else's viewpoint. It's your way or no one else's right, not being able to agree to disagree, difficulty leading and following, and also tending to ostracize others. Now, that is very unhealthy and dysfunctional. So what should we do in terms of our social health? We should know ourselves, knowing yourself, being yourself, and sharing yourself. This whole concept of we need to be a blank page at work and completely private, it's a fallacy. You can't just switch off and leave the rest of your life out of the office. So reflecting on your own life, but also reflecting on the lives of the people that you touch. We tend to see everyone as a competitor, but we need to see them as partners, even in business. So if we look at the 4 pillars of healthy relationships, and that is true in your personal life, but also at work, is empathy, fairness, communication, and appreciation. And what is interesting, the most significant predictor of health, according to Brody, now we don't necessarily agree with him, but he's of the opinion it's better than diet or exercise, is the number of strong groups people belong to. Where does that connect in the model with neuroscience? We all know that we can't function as an island. We need social connectedness. We know that people that socially connected, they live longer, they're happier, they have less high blood pressure, they have less diabetes, there's less depression. We know that physical touch is good for our mood and it reduces stress. And we know that laughter is the best medicine. This is a very interesting study. It's one of the longest running studies in medicine, actually. It was done over a period of 30 years. And what they looked is at a social network model where each of these dots represent a person. Squares are men, circles are women. Yellow is happy, and blue is the saddest. And as you can see here, unhappy people cluster together. What the research show, we all need 4 happy friends, 4 good happy friends. More than 4 take too much time, but there's also not an added benefit for it. And what is interesting, if I have a good friend, Hanli, if she's happy and a good friend of mine, her good friend Almin, which I only know because I know Hanli, also contributes to my happiness, and Almin's good friend that I don't know, which contributes to Almin's happiness, contributes to Hanli's happiness, contributes to my happiness. And that additive effect is roughly 9%. And I need 4 friends like Hanli, and then it peaks around 36 to 40% as a plateau effect. So more than that 4 good connections doesn't really contribute to my happiness anymore. Let's look at emotional health, one of the other aspects. But emotional health is about self-awareness, positive emotions, and then resilience, which we're talking about the whole day actually today is in a way resilience. Warning signs, more stress, inability to express or regulate your emotions. And remember, it's not healthy to repress. So it's not about repressing emotions. You're not allowed to feel it. You always need to keep a straight face. That's not what we say, but to be able to voice it and deal with it constructively. 80% of executives have blind spots about themselves, and 40% have strengths that they're unaware of. 99% of us are just racing around and in constant motion and action, not really taking the time to think. High IQ does not guarantee success. It's a benefit. Definitely a bonus, but ESI improves performance. ESI, it's my own acronym, it's emotional and social intelligence. And it refers to your personal competencies and social competencies. So ESI means the ability to recognize my own emotions and to regulate it. And then the second step, the social aspect of it, is ability to identify others' emotions and to regulate it. If you look at a formula for success, we look at IQ, we look at technical skill or experience, and we look at ESI, emotional and social intelligence. The ratio is 1:1:2. So your emotional and social intelligence impact on your success as a leader or in life in general and achievement is double your IQ and is double your technical skill. And that's why it's so important for us. But I want to look a little bit more. It's a newer concept in neuroleadership, and some of you might be familiar with the work of David Rock. Now, Rock described in 2008 what he calls the SCARF model. All social interaction is about minimizing threat, maximizing reward. I want to spend time with people where I feel happy, good, safe. I want to stay away from people that makes me feel miserable, insecure, sad, anxious. If we look at rejection or social rejection, it activates the same areas in our brain, in our cingulum, which registers pain. So what is the SCARF model about? It's about avoiding threat, because threat we withdraw or retract, and rewarding or approaching something that makes us feel better. And SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. We mentioned autonomy, if you don't have a voice, if you don't have a sense of control. We mentioned uncertainty. We mentioned fairness. We just talked now about social connectedness. If you feel that these things are under attack, you're going to have an emotional response. Vocational health. Now, I always have a response like this if I read about Steve Jobs. He's not in my book of good leaders, all in all, or healthy leaders, all in all, but he was strong on vocational health. He really realized in how to bring out the best in his team was to make them better in terms of challenges. And he said, this is what I want. How you get there is up to you. So he gave a lot of autonomy there as well. But it's about having a meaningful calling, and we're going back to how do we prevent burnout? By finding meaning. So create meaning for your team and the people that you work with. Personal mastery, and then a drive to succeed. Employees, especially young people, don't want a paycheck. They want more. They want meaning. They want to feel that they are developing. And the research now shows that children that's currently at school will have up to 14 career changes before the age of 40. But anything you're going to try, you need to study. You need to prepare. You need to ask people who have done it before how they did it. You need to observe. You're going to do all because you want to do well. It's that internal locus of control. There's a very strong correlation between work and job meaningful work and job satisfaction. And meaningful work, there's a sense of social impact, self-actualization, personal accomplishment, and belief in able to reach career goals. And A very important concept here is the difference between reward and recognition. What is the difference? Recognition is not always tangible. Recognition is valuing the person. Reward is usually tangible, whether it's tangible in terms of time off or a monetary or a price or whatever, or vacation, but that's usually rewarding a target or a metrics. So it's an external locus of control. And unfortunately, companies have the ratio wrong. We should have way more importance to the internal locus of control, to recognition of a person, even someone that just makes the best cup of tea in the office, than what it is rewarding the one that makes the most tea in the office type of thing. But there should be recognition, the value, it means so much to me that you greet me every morning. That type of recognition is way more important than tangible rewards. The last one of the 6 legs then of the healthy leadership model, which I blended now with the neuroscience and the seeds of self-care, is then spiritual health. And this is something that's grossly neglected in our lives these days. And I'm not talking about religion necessarily, because often the more religious someone is, the less spiritual they are. But I'm talking about having a higher purpose, believing in something bigger than yourself, more than yourself, global connectedness, and then a generosity of spirit. Okay, giving more than what you expect to receive. Again, if you read through the signs, this is the signs of burnout. So if you do not invest in your spiritual health, you will develop some of this signs of burnout. So inability to handle adversity, life's up and downs, etc. Also not being culturally attuned and connected with others. The more your life is all about you, towards your success, towards you looking good, towards other people looking at you and giving you the credit, the less you are able to truly lead healthy people to become healthy leaders. It should be about others. And it's interesting, if companies that's generous with gratitude outperform 12 times the less generous companies. So people that invest more, and we think it's only about CSI or tax benefits or whatever. But companies that actually invest more in the community and give more freely are found to be more productive, because the employees find more meaning. They find more meaning, they find more of this generosity and the spirit of giving and the connection with the societies and the communities. The last concept that I want to add in terms of spiritual health, and I put it here, I wasn't sure where to fit it in, emotional health or spiritual health, and I decided to put mindfulness under spiritual health. Mindfulness is a state of active, open attention on the present. When you're mindful, you observe your thoughts and feelings from a distance without judging them, good or bad. Instead of letting your life pass you by, mindfulness means living in the moment and awakening to experience. What does studies show? This is I love this study. It's obviously an American study because they think out this type of things. It's a study that's specifically about happiness again, and mindfulness. And what they've done is they provided everyone with cell phones and apps, and they could beep you at any moment of the day. And at that moment when you get the beep, you had to answer 3 questions. Okay, you had to say, how are you feeling right now? On a scale from 0 to 100 in terms of happiness or feeling good or whatever. What are you doing right now? And then the dangerous question, are you thinking about something else than what you're doing right now? Okay, now this is a bubble graph. We're first going to look above the line. So it's in terms of how many people or how many hours and times were they busy with in this study with whatever they were busy with, and how much did it contribute to their happiness, where the happiness was averaged there in around 60. Okay, rest and sleep helps nothing. Okay, working can make you less happy, but you spend most of your time at that. Sitting on the computer detracts from your happiness. Commuting and traveling detracts from your happiness. Listening to music is neutral. Doing housework is actually better than being on the computer. Watching TV, people do it more, and it's a bit better than housework apparently. But what's really good if you go down? Praying and worshipping, but look how little time we spend on it. Meditating, almost nothing compared to the rest. Playing, talking and conversation, significant social connections. So once again, we talked about eating, we talked about social connections. Look who's exercising. Second to making love, that is the thing that contributes most to happiness and feelings of wellness. Okay? Making love beats them all, but I mean, we can't spend too much time on it. Okay? But impractical. So, Why don't we do more of the things that really make us feel better? That's the one question, and that links to everything that we've said so far. But the other thing is, it doesn't matter you do it, and you're doing other things in your mind. The third question was, are you thinking about something else than what you're currently doing? Okay. So below the line, it's now, if you start on an average there of about 60, unpleasant mind wandering. So if you're sitting here in the class and worrying about something else at work, or about your children this morning, or in general about your to-do list or whatever, you detract from the positive experience you can have here now with up to 30%. Neutral mind wandering, that when you're driving, sometimes when you drive, you think, oh hell, I'm here. Did I stop at the robot? Okay, that going blank feeling actually takes away some of your happiness. Pleasant mind wandering, fantasizing, daydreaming, thinking about what you're going to do tonight can improve. But the best thing to do is not mind wandering. There's a very solid, almost a 10% improvement in a big portion of time if you are in the here and now. So what does mindfulness do? Meditation. Mindfulness is meditation is one example of mindfulness. You can be mindful in anything you do. It literally helps us to grow grey matter and neurons in that part of our brain that controls mood, anxiety, fear, memory, and wellness. I love Ikigai. I don't know if you know the model Ikigai. It's a Japanese model, and it's just another way of looking at all of this. And this is really, for me, this is maybe, Louis-Deline, about what I consider being grounded and being really rooted as well. It's paying attention to all these aspects of health for you as a leader, but then also the idea of carrying it to your company. But it specifically means to find that place of Ikigai. It's the reason for being. Okay, so where your passion, your mission, your vocation, your profession overlaps. That is Ikigai. And if you can find that spot, then you will not burn out. So, becoming a healthy leader, we've touched now on all the different aspects. Make a personal commitment to live the 6 dimensions of healthy leadership every day. That's 6 aspects that we choose or discuss now. Challenge yourself to be the best person and leader you can be, using attention, paying attention to it, and doing things with intention and mindfulness, whether it's sleep, exercise, educating, diet, or socializing. So now we're sitting with these different aspects, which we grouped it a little bit different than this model. But what is the benefit in terms of where you are and who you are now in terms of building a healthy organization? So taking this now into action. And to build a healthy organization, there is now a few things that's important. And how does this translate? Tap into a higher purpose. Forge a shared direction. Foster productive relationships. Unleash human energy. Seize opportunities and drive high performance. So what do we say if we tap into higher purpose? And this is just concepts that I want you to have in mind, because it's actually, these things. Most people are motivated less by external rewards than by their values and by recognition. People want to feel that they matter and what they do are meaningful. That protects them against burnout. How do we do it? Or what is the results if we do it? If we value people, if we make them feel valued, it increases energy, greater sense of pride, less conflict, higher morale, stronger alignment. When we look at a shared direction, to a vision, to know where we're going, not how we should get there, but at least to know what's the goals. It's a goal to shoot for and a path for hitting the target. It's important to hold 2 things in your head simultaneously. The current reality, for me this was quite ironic. Who said it? Alan Mullally from Ford. So acknowledge the current reality and have a better plan for the future. I found it quite ironic after the Cougar debacle. Okay, but in any case, why is forging a shared direction important? If we know where we're going, we're aligned, efficient, less strategic drift, fewer missteps, greater momentum, greater return on investment. Unleashing human potential, and that's all about today. Unleashing your own potential and also those of others. It's again, and these things come up and over, recognizing people, teaching and mentoring, protecting people, but also stimulating and stretching them. Take away that period of inactivity at work. We will have greater commitment from employees, more confidence and willingness, learning and growth, decreased turnover, attract talent, lower recruiting costs. Looking at relationships, that's social health. You can have more profitable joint ventures, at ventures as well, and ventures. Greater ability to leverage partnerships, deeper relationships, loyalty, no silo mentality, and then improved community connections as well. Seizing new opportunities. People want to innovate. They want to be stimulated. There's faster growth, more market share. Resilience. If you as a person, as a leader is resilient and your organization is resilient, you will also have it in other markets. And then again, invest in the community. That's spiritual health. Lastly, driving high performance. How does it translate? Customer service, fewer problems, reputation, improvement, willingness to be involved, and then high performance from each and every person. What is the organization's responsibility then? Or the leader's responsibility in an organization towards the employees? We look at prevention, and prevention is a range of interventions aimed at reducing risks or threats to health. And we get primary, secondary, and tertiary preventions. Primary prevention means we prevent something before there's illness. If we make sure that there's not this bouts of activity and underactivity, but that it's more leveled out. If we put that in place, we can prevent people from developing burnout, anxiety, depression. So it's primary prevention. Secondary prevention is when there is a problem, we try to limit the impact. We try to limit the morbidity or the consequences. Tertiary prevention, I'm just giving you an example. Tertiary prevention would now be to reduce complications. So prevent someone, say for example, they have been diagnosed with depression, they are on treatment, but to try to make sure that they don't relapse, or they've been in an accident and they have fractured the leg, to make sure that they are rehabilitated properly. The problem is if we look at all the health and wellness programs at works at the moment. Johnson & Johnson got a very good one. Theirs is working. Google's is working. There is companies in South Africa that have brilliant programs that's really working. But often it's like a personal diet or a personal exercise program. It's not sustainable because people use momentum. Why is things not sustainable often? It is something that other people see the value in, but there's no personal value for you in. Okay, so you need to own it. And often facts help, giving them the science and so. But if you look at what the organization needs to do technically in terms of ensuring a healthy workforce, it's alleviating and eradicating possible stresses, foster a healthy educational environment, promote social connectedness and resilience, support services and access to mental health services. So this does not work. So we need in South Africa to relook at another way how we can keep people healthy. So if we want to reform it and really make our workforce healthy, like we need to keep ourselves healthy and resilient as leaders, addressing all 6 aspects, that's what we need to go and do at our teams and at our organizations and pay attention to all of them. So what I want you to do now, there's 6 dimensions, and I want you to take that and think, and first do it quickly for yourself. We can divide it now, but first quickly divide it for yourself and make your own personal plan. You're going to reflect on your personal plan in terms of primary prevention. With other case, I'm going to invest in myself now before I have an emotional problem. If you realize there is something in terms of your emotional health, how are you going to address it now? And how are you going to safeguard you in the future? Then you're going to have suggestions and discuss with your colleagues in terms of the organizational plan. How can I translate this now to my organization? The one thing that is, as with all models, and that is the one model, although I love the model, which I think I did say I push my own things in between as well, is that a model is never clear cut. We can't box things. We can't box people. We can't box aspects. Simplest example, exercise. Does exercise really fall under physical health only? No. It's intellectual health. It's emotional health. So the power of a model is it's powerful in the way it at least raises awareness in our heads. It raises awareness in terms it makes us reflect and think about it, and with intention, do something about it. For me, the most powerful thing in the model is just to make you think. And then the learning also is that one thing there can be company guidelines in terms of what we are going to do in terms of health, but it has to be individualized. So, burnout and other mental health problems are increasingly being regarded as a serious burden for employees, for employers, and for the economy, society at large. Prevention is the best strategy to follow, to prevent complications in terms of financial, but also physical or emotional disability and people being disabled then and just contributing to unemployment again. But what we know is that the way that we looked at prevention in the past didn't look at health. It looked at the absence of disease. If you go back to that definition of health and mental health, what we said initially. So current focus in company is just on the absence of disease and not on health, not on the 6 different aspects that contribute to health. But if we want to change that, we need to start with being healthy ourselves and reflect on this, because if we don't reflect what's absent, we will not be aware of that even in our companies or look at that. And employers and employees share responsibility. We can put all these programs in place, but still you need to go and seek help when it's necessary. You need to look after your own physical health, etc., etc. So there's employee responsibility and employer responsibility. And just calling something burnout is maybe sometimes not accepting responsibility either. So without physical health, you lack the speed to respond to the speed of change in the world. Without emotional health, we are not resilient, and there will be way too much negativity. Intellectual health is vital for our ability to adapt to change as well, for change management. Social health, if we don't have that, we can't mobilize people. If we don't have that relatedness and that connections in your workplace and even between different companies, even your competitors, you cannot mobilize people. If there's not enough drive, and for drive, you need to be fit. You need to be physically healthy to have the drive to maintain it. You cannot have the vocational health. And it's vibrant spiritual health that gives us the ability to show people a higher purpose and a bigger meaning, and that community connection and generosity, which makes life meaningful. So for all of you, vaccinate yourself with resilience. And leadership is contagious. And every healthy leader will inspire someone else to become a healthy leader, even if it's just by leading by example. If other people see that you take care of yourself, you are in the role model as well. Just another thought, healthy leaders and healthy organizations provide air, clean air. What is air? Air is autonomy. It is interrelatedness, so there's connections, and it's recognition. And we often think we can't make a difference, but we truly can transform the world one leader at a time, as we did and eradicate some illnesses in the world by in providing immunization or vaccine to one child at a time. We can eradicate these problems. We can eradicate burnout.